screen with you. And let me know when you see something on the screen, please. Is the screen visible to all of you? Please use the chat box. Yep. Alrighty. Hello, hello. Samshir. How are you? Okay. So this is week number 12. You think about it. We did 12 of these sessions. 12th is today. And I have shared my webcam. Let me know when you see me. Am I visible to you? You guys see me? Yep, Vizira. All right. So, just like we all know, there's going to be two different parts to the session. In the first part, we'll have the questions. I'm going to be asking you 20 questions just to check your preparation, right? And in the second half, so we're going to take a break after 20 questions, and then a quick 10 minutes break. And then we'll start with any questions that you might have, that you want to know about. A lot of people writing the examination nowadays. I came across a lot of those who did the PMP certification in the last few weeks. All are, maybe your batchmates as well. Okay, so let's get it started. In the first area, let's start with the questions. So now we're going to start off with a few warm-up questions, and then the intensity of the questions will grow as we move ahead with those questions, okay? Let's start with the question number 1. So the question is that mid-implementation, the client replaces the CIO with one spectacle of your project's value. Is questions prior approvals and suggests freeze in payments until a new review. What should you do first? What should you do first? You can do all 4 of these actually. So the new CIO is one of the spectacles of your project value. And this new guy is kind of messing with you now. He questions prior approval. What's wrong with the Bravo here? Tell me. Demand the executive level intervention, citing the breach of contract because he's telling you to stop the payments until the review. Why can't you go for the Bravo? Why is the Alpha the answer of your choice? Anybody? Because you're acting before the assessment. Absolutely, yes, Jimmy. So yes, first you provide a detailed benefit realization report linking the milestones to the return on investment achieved so far. Once that is done, still if he's not releasing the payments, you act on that. You demand the intervention from the executive level. So I'm going to go Alpha. Let's see. Bingo. Yep. So Alpha is the answer. That's absolutely right. Question number 2, ladies and gentlemen. A software project reports green matrix, but independent QA finds accumulating shortcuts undocumented as a technical debt. The supervisor values speed over perfection. Deliver that fast. What's the PM's best response? You definitely cannot go Charlie, can you? Your answers, please. The sponsor wants speedy delivery over the perfection. He don't care about the perfection. Good morning, Claude. How are you today? The PM's best response should be to quantify first, right? To quantify the impact, present the repayment roadmap, and seeks the sponsor's approval for the phased correction. If he approves it, go ahead with that, right? Eventually, who's my customer is my sponsor, right? So it is not my prerogative that who he delivers to, right? I'm going to deliver that to my customer. That's my sponsor. Yep, bravo, pretty right. That's the answer to this question. Question number 3, ladies and gentlemen. Your outsourced support vendor refuses to share the detailed configuration document, site and intellectual property. The contract is silent on knowledge transfer clauses, and renewal is due the next quarter. What's your most strategic action? Yep, I agree with you. So initiate a formal transition readiness audit, correct? And include the knowledge transfer as a part of the contract. And you just bring the clarity. So what is happening right now? That the vendor is saying that it's my IP. I cannot share that IP with you. And the contract doesn't talk about it, right? On the knowledge transfer. It is not talking about much. It's silent on the knowledge transfer. So include that. Do the negotiations include that? Let's go, bravo. Let's see. That's the answer. The auditing establishes the baseline evidences, embedding the transfer in renewal ensures the leverage. That's what we should do without confrontation. Question number 4, ladies and gentlemen, a hybrid project's steering committee demands weekly owned value matrices, but the Scrum team argues owned value doesn't reflect the HR process, and that happens. You see, it's a very common thing that happens. The projects which are predominantly predictive methodology projects, we do everything based on the owned value analysis. But when it comes to the hybrid environments, the teams who've been working on HR environments, they literally disregards the earned values. They say that earned values doesn't work in HR process, right? How should the PM balance both the expectations? But then if you go alpha, now listen, you guys are doing alpha, right? But if you go alpha, you see, so I translated my burn up and my velocity, right, into that cost equivalent. Now that satisfies the HR teams. I understand that. But it's a hybrid project. So you're going to have the predictive teams as well. They would want to see the earned value analysis. How are you going to balance that part? I mean, so if you look at alpha, isn't it more supportive towards the AHL teams? Then why you chose alpha? Tell me. I'll tell you why. Because if you read the rest of the responses, those responses are absolutely those that you cannot actually proceed with. You see, if you enforce the earned value track in all the sprints to maintain the governance consistency, the problem is how would you calculate the earned values based on the velocity data? Well, you cannot do that, right? You cannot replace this from Kraken because that's an action that you have taken, right? Based on the milestones, right? Now, eventually, that's where the problem is coming. The Scrum teams are saying that we don't consider earned value as one of the standards to calculate the progress, right? Or the variance analysis, right? So you cannot go Charlie actually. And now, if you go with the qualitative updates instead of numerical data, the qualitative is very subjective, correct? Now, that doesn't balance things because one part of the team may say that, all right, so our subjective analysis says that we are behind on the schedule and the cost. The other part of the team may think that we are on track because that's all subjective that the people will decide based on their qualitative assessment. So the only possible answer here out of these four is the alpha. Although the alpha is mostly, that option is actually more supportive of the HL, but that's where the question, if you read the question also says that the problem is with the HL teams only, correct? The Scrum teams, the HL teams, they are arguing, right? So you need to satisfy them because for the predictive teams, the EV is already working fine, correct? Okay. So question number 5, ladies and gentlemen, your client insists on moving the critical design work offshore to save the cost, despite local team concerns about time zone overlap and intellectual property risk. The senior management supports the cost savings. What should you do? Good question. Read the question again. Okay. So if you follow the rules, then you're going to realize that there is only one option which does the analysis before taking an action. So what is that option? That's the option number Bravo. Present a quantified risk benefit matrix comparing the savings versus the delivery and the compliance impact. Let's go Bravo. Yep, Bravo is the answer because that's where we are doing the analysis before taking an action. For the rest, documenting objections is an action, refusing is an action, proceeding is an action that you're taking. All right. There's only one option in which you are doing the analysis. That is the correct answer. Question number 6, ladies and gentlemen, midway through the project execution, a key component's specification changed due to regulatory updates. Bingo, there we go, right? Here comes the problem. The procurement team already issued purchase orders under the old specifications, changing them means penalties. What should you do? Look for a new job. That is what you should do. So practically, okay. So that's from the exam's perspective. So what you're answering is from the exam perspective. So what you would have done practically, Jim? Let's be honest with me. What would you do practically? Which option? Practical answer is alpha. This is what I would have done. I'm telling you on a recorded line. This is what I would have done. I'll halt the shipment and then I'll take the action, Charlie. Okay. So first I'm going to do the alpha, then the Charlie. But then from the exam's perspective, of course, Charlie is the answer. The formal change control, change order amendment backed by the compliance rationale preserves the audit trail, minimizes the exposure to the risk. The real world, bro, no, no, because that depends upon how much of the specification has been changed. So if you see a key component specifications change due to a regulatory updates. Now, say that's the component, right? So it's a cylinder that fits into a machine. Okay, let's say. Now, the diameter of this is, let's say 35 mm. Okay. Now, the thickness of this is about 35 mm. Now, the new specification says it should be 38.5 mm. How would you increase the thickness? Tell me, how would you retrofit this thing? Can you retrofit this component? I mean, if that would have been from 35 to 30, I can grind it off and retrofit. Correct? Some shit. What if it is more? Because I don't know. The specifications didn't tell me that as part of the question. So it depends case to case, right? So if I can retrofit, I will. But then again, eventually you have to go for Charlie, right? Eventually. So you go Alpha, you go Bravo, but then you have to do Charlie. Correct? Good. Question 7, ladies and gentlemen. In a global, this kind of situation can compromise the project. Absolutely, it will. Absolutely, it will. But then, if it's a regulatory change, then we cannot proceed with the old components, can we? I mean, it may have an impact on my time and of course on my cost because the new items I already gave the purchase order. The vendor may have custom made those items for me. That's why I have to negotiate with them now. In a global HR team, the US developers views Indian quality assurance feedback as overly critical. The QA calls the developers arrogant and dismissive. Very practical situation. Velocity drops sharply. Management pressures you to fix the culture fast. What's your immediate leadership move? The leadership move, ladies and gentlemen. Easy question, right? You cannot separate the teams. You cannot escalate everything to the HR. Although, I mean, you can kind of do that for the sensitivity training. But then escalation is like the word escalation itself cannot be an answer. Replace the team members, definitely not an answer. So the only possible answer is Bravo, is to conduct a blame-free intellectual workshop highlighting the collaboration norms and the shared accountability. This is what you should do. Well, hopefully that's the answer. Yep, that is the answer. That was question number 7 for you, ladies and gentlemen. Question number 8. Two C-level sponsors disagree and the COO wants schedule compression to beat the competition. The CIO demands full cybersecurity validations before the release. Both fund the initiative. Now that's the problem. What is the best course of action? Bravo is a very, very nice answer. That is what you should do. So facilitate a joint risk workshop quantifying the business impact of both the stances. I mean, so they both may be correct. The COO wants to beat the competition. He has his own rationale for that. And the CIO is, more focused on the clearances, the validations. They both have their own rationales for that. Let's listen to both of them. Let's do the quantification, right? In terms of numbers, the quantification, and then take a decision. So yeah, bravo. That's the answer. You can't arbitrate executive conflicts solo. Quantify them, transparent risk dialogue, restore the governance. Question number 9, ladies and gentlemen. A government client requests access to anonymized citizen data produced by your analytics project to test the public service efficiency. Your data scientist reveals that when cross-referenced with another dataset, the information could de-anonymize the individuals. The client insists, citing national interest. What should the PM do? Are you able to understand how intense that situation is? Yeah, it's a public data. Okay, what are you going to do? Why Bravo? Why Bravo? Oh, there goes Charlie. Good morning today. How are you today, buddy? Just saw you. Delta, Debushish, that's a very potential answer. Allow access to a pilot sample to evaluate the impact first. Very potential answer. Okay. What's the answer? The answer is Bravo. Why? Because it is both a legal and a security of the public data issue, right? So go to the data ethics board before you do any release, take an approval from them. Only then you're going to do that. The governance escalation is mandatory when it comes to legal and ethical thresholds, right? The PMI's code of ethics and professional conduct, ladies and gentlemen, that's the first thing that I told you to read when we started the classes. This is a question from the PMI's code of ethics. After Bravo, we can do Delta. Yeah, but then the question actually doesn't talk about any pilot sample, but we can do it to check the impact if we wish to do that. Let's just cross verify that with the other data set to see if it actually reveals the identity, right? So because that's the question is de-anonymize. Well, okay. Question number 10, ladies and gentlemen, your multinational ERP program is 60% deployed when a supplier in another region faces political sanctions. Okay. The hardware the hardware procured through the supplier can't legally ship, delaying 3 go lives. Finance warns the project's holding cost now exceeds the sanction affected purchase value. What's your next best move as the project manager? Next best move. A delta is not an option, okay? I give that to you. It has to be between Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Bravo is a very potential answer if you see. But you still wish to go Charlie. So the next best move, all of these could be the moves, right? But the next best move is to go Charlie, because you need to see three different things: legalities, continuities, and those, the the finance, all of those three things. Question 11, ladies and gentlemen. An agile release is near incompletion when the customer demands additional security tests that weren't in the scope but are mandatory for the production release. The team estimates 2 extra sprints. The sponsor refuses any delay. What should the PM do? Now that's an agile project, a pure agile project. The customer demanded additional security tests that were not in the scope, but they were not the part of the product backlog items, but are mandatory for the production release. Come on. Delta is a very potential answer, actually. Jim, it's a very potential answer. Okay, so the answer is Delta. Negotiate a risk-based partial release with documented residual risk. Why not Bravo? Come on. More than half of you said Bravo. Why not Bravo? You answer that and I pay for the lunch. Why only Jimmy was correct here? Tell me why not Bravo? Because we can't change during sprints. But you said Bravo before, Bilal. You answered Bravo. No, you went Delta? Well, that's not the reason. The reason is something else. Think about it. Oh, you didn't answer? Think about it. Jimmy, why not Bravo, buddy? Why you went Delta? Because the sponsor doesn't want the delay. No, because it's an agile project, right? So in agile projects, there is no scope change, there is no ICC process, there is no rebaseline, and okay. So when you say rebaselining, isn't that a predictive term? Have you seen the baselines in HL for the project? So the backlog reprioritization, I agree, right? Rebaselining in an HL environment. Yeah. And the other thing is that if it is mandatory, then you first have to, you know, so you are going ahead with the release. But then there are a few things which are mandatory for the full release, the production release. Let's not go for the production release. Let's go for a partial release. Take them as the risk with you. Take an approval on those, conduct those tests. Maybe the impact analysis, when that comes, I'm going to reprioritize the backlog items. Correct? That's why. Question number 12. A cross-departmental project relies heavily on a matrixed resource who's also committed to another high priority initiative. His delays are causing downstream impact. Functional management refuses to reprioritize. What's your best escalation path? What is your best escalation path? Think again, Bilal. Read the question again. Hey guys, am I audible? You guys hear me? Manzoor can't. Manzoor, you need to check your. Oh, how would he hear this? Bilal, tell Manzoor to reconnect to the audio, please. You need to tap that on the chat window because he can't hear me. Or somebody can write to Manzoor that he need to reconnect. Okay, the answer is no. There's only one potential answer to this question. That is alpha. Okay, a matrix organization where the resource is shared, right? So he'll be working on departmental work, on projects, maybe multiple projects, right? So what you have to do, you have to present the quantitative impact data to the project sponsor and request the resource arbitration, maybe getting another resource and maybe getting more time from the current resource, whatever that is. But you have to back it up with the data, right? So that's why you need to do the quantitative impact data analysis. Question number 13. During the large infrastructure rollout, three subcontractors report progress differently. One uses earned values, one the percentage complete, and one is based on the milestones. The steering committee questions the reliability of progress reports. What should the PM implement? Okay, good question. And that happens, very practical situation, especially construction, infrastructure projects. One vendor uses the earned values, the other one uses the percentage complete as the standard. Third one based on the milestones. Yeah, Jimmy. Jimmy goes bravo, by the way, just so you guys know. Devishish agrees with Jimmy this time. Okay, tell me, why not alpha? Why not mandate a single process measurement, progress measurement system across all the subcontractors? Why not that? Tell everybody to use earned values or tell everybody to use the milestone progress. No, that's what the question is asking you, Samshir. What should the PM implement? So when you implement, it's an action only that you have to take. All of them, four are the actions. They should absolutely, absolutely. That means we understand that the data is not wrong, correct? The process is not the problem. The answer is bravo. You create a weighted progress aggregation method based on the contract and the delivery. Still the same problem occurring. I can't hear your voice. All right. Back to Manzoor. You need to log out, log in again, and connect. Yep. Also, please check the voice levels. Why the Bravo is this smart approach? Because you see, every vendor can give you the rationale that, as for me, the milestone reports are right, and which is right actually, right? The big word in project management, the big word in project management is consensus, correct? Buy-ins, agreements, now a normalization, right? These are big words in project management. Now for that, because as long as everybody, so for me, earned value analysis is the right approach. For you, the milestones is the right approach. Somebody else, maybe the percentage completion is the right approach. Now, what should I implement as a project manager that satisfies all the three parties? Let's take a weighted average of all of those and bring the data, right? That's why not the alpha. Question number 14, a multi-phase research project is behind the schedule. The PM discovers that the delay stems from a scientist withholding the experimental data, wherein the premature disclosure. The sponsor demands all the data immediately to present to the investors. The scientist cites the ethical protocols requiring peer review before the release. What should the project manager do? Read the question again, okay? It's a research project which is running behind the schedule. I see the only possible answer as the Bravo. You cannot compel the scientist, can you? You cannot escalate. You cannot replace the scientist. So the only possible answer here is the Bravo, which is to support the scientist's adherence to the protocols and negotiate the alternative communication to the investors. Question number 15. A vendor-managed cloud migration project reports green status weekly. However, the internal audit team finds major untracked issues in configuration compliances. The vendor claims these aren't in the scope, though the contract ambiguously states the shared accountability. The sponsor trusts the vendor's updates and doubts the audit. What is your best next action? The best next action. So the contract is ambiguous, right? So it is not very clear when it comes to the shared responsibility. So the vendor can claim, he can claim that that's not a part of my project scope. And he is claiming it because it is not very clearly mentioned in the contract. What's wrong with the delta? What is wrong with the delta? Okay, I give it to you. The answer is alpha. You need to request immediate clarification from the legal team because that's an issue with the compliance. Now, whenever there is a compliance issue, a legal issue, you need to seek the clarification from the legal department and review the contract accountability matrices. Question number 16, ladies and gentlemen, during a high visibility HR transformation, very highly visible to the organization, to the senior stakeholders, a senior manager insists on weekly owned value reports for consistency with the other projects. The HR teams use the Kanban matrices and feel that earned value reporting contradicts the flow-based system, which is actually true. The PM is caught between executive demands and the HR principles. What should the PM do? Very similar question to what we saw earlier in today's session, right? Okay, so the answer is bravo. You propose the mapping of HR matrices to the on value management equivalents for the consistency, bring that symmetry in, and move ahead with the project. Question number 17, you are leading an ERP implementation for a healthcare chain. Midway, a new government regulation mandates the data localization and stricter encryption standards. Incorporating these will cause a 2 months delay and $100,000 cost overrun. The sponsor says we can't miss the go live date. Just make it work somehow. The compliance officers warns of penalties if regulations are ignored. What should the project manager do? It's an ERP in a healthcare. Bravo. Uday? A lot of browsers apparently. Jimmy? Okay. So the answer is Charlie. Because whenever there is a legal or regulatory constraint conflicting with the sponsor's demand, the PM must escalate to the governance, right? So the steering committee, because there is a contradiction between what the sponsor is saying. The sponsor said, make it work somehow, go live, right? But there is a compliance issue. There's a issue with the regulations, right? Whenever that happens, you escalate that to the senior authorities. You escalate that to the steering committee. That's why Charlie escalate the compliance conflict to the steering committee for the resolution and document the regulatory risk as the one of the risks formally. Question number 18. A distributed HR team is struggling. The sprint reviews show velocity fluctuations and the user satisfaction is dropping. Interviews reveal the developers feel pressured to overcome it due to the stakeholders' presence in the planning sessions. The product owner defends this, saying it helps ensure the business alignment. The PM suspects the psychological safety issue, but the sponsor only cares about the output matrices. What is the best long-term intervention? Long-term. Yeah, this is probably the easiest of the questions to answer so far. Correct? Because the answer is the only potential answer. All of them are undoable things, right? So yeah, the answer is alpha, of course. You conduct a private retrospective without those stakeholders within the team first. And you see, if you recall, the retrospective is anyways, the product owner and the customer stakeholders are not the part of it. Remember, right? To restore the team openness and the realistic commitments. Question 19, you're managing a construction project where an engineering subcontractor has delivered designs with 15% variance from the specification, 15% variance. The variance technically improves the structural stability, but it deviates from approved drawings, although these are good changes, okay? These are good changes. The client's representative insists on a rejection. The site in non-compliance with the contract, the engineering team argues that approving it will save the time and improve the quality of the product. Changing the design formally would require weeks of additional documentations and delays. What is your most appropriate action right now? So when we talked about the ICC process, the integrated change control process back in our PMP discussion during those classes, we said that any change request because of any reason whatsoever goes into the change control that goes to the change control board. or to the ICC process, you do the impact analysis, you bring that analysis onto the table, and if it is within the authorities of the ICC to approve it, they can either approve it or reject it or delay those decisions. So the answer should be bravo, right? Form and change control process is bravo, right? The ICC process. Last question, ladies and gentlemen. You are managing a multi-vendor digital transformation project for a financial institution. Half the team follows the HR for the front end, and the rest follows a traditional model for integration with the legacy systems. During the integration testing phase, the HR vendors pauses for early deployment of a partially completed API, claiming incremental delivery value. The other vendor wants that deploying the early could cause data integrity risks since the dependencies are incomplete. The sponsor, unaware of the risk details, pressures you to demonstrate visible progress this quarter to justify the fundings. What should you do next? You know what you should do? You should go back and read the question again. Read that. It's a hybrid project, by the way. Okay. Analysis and the action, correct? Alpha, Bravo, and Delta are the actions. Charlie is the analysis should be your answer. Facilitate a technical risk assessment workshop with both the vendors and the stakeholders to analyze the deployment impact before deciding. You may decide to go with the partial release. You may do that because the sponsor is demanding it. But then you have to, before you take an action, you have to do the analysis. So the correct answer is it Charlie? All right, tell me, what's your score? How many correct answers? All 20? Jimmy, awesome, buddy. Dibishish got 17, 19, Bilal. Samshir got 19. She has got 18. Awesome, you guys are doing good. Claude got 17, which is fair, which is not bad, actually. If you're getting 17 out of 20, that's a good number. 18. Yeah. So if you see today, we started with smaller scenarios and then I kept giving you bigger and bigger and bigger scenarios. Look at this one. This is how big the scenario is. Arsalan got 19. Fantastic, Arsalan. Hey, Arsalan, when is your exam? You told me that you booked your exam. Is it booked? Claude has also booked it. Hey, Claude, you submitted the application. You got an approval on that? Yeah. Not approved yet. Okay. I filed the application waiting for the approval. No, it's not booked. You're planning to book it anytime soon? 3rd of November. Oh, you are also waiting for the approval? Okay. So that was the first leg of this meeting. We're going to take a 10 minutes break. We're going to come back and then I'll answer any questions that you have. And then we can wrap up this session. Okay. So let's just take a quick break here. So please share the recordings. They will be uploaded on the YouTube channel. So you can always go back and check that on the YouTube. Okay, we'll share the channel link. Okay, you can also find the previous sessions, the Q&A sessions that we did. So it is the 12th session that we're doing. So you're going to see the rest of the afternoon there. I shall see you after the break. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are we all back after the break? Roll call, please. Now let's start with the second leg of this session, in which I will read the questions, your questions, and I'll answer those questions to the best of my ability. Yes, Claude. So let's do that. So questions and answers, ladies and gentlemen. Now, please type your questions on the chat window. I'll read and answer them one by one. I'll wait for your questions. You guys are all doing the preparation nowadays, so you may have a few of those questions or encounter a situation during your preparation. If you have any such questions, you can ask me those questions. I have from the IMC's mock test. Yes, Samshed. Here's the question. On the issue log and risk registers are the incorporated at one point. I have a sample question to share as well. Yeah, question on issue log and risk register. Okay, tell me. Now, some share got a question here. Let's just read this. And this is from the IMC, so I can bring it full screen. Okay. So you observe uneven resource utilization in your project and intend to apply the resource leveling by shifting the activities from a week with high resource usage to a week with minimal usage. Which of the following tools and techniques would be suitable for this situation? Okay, network diagrams, responsibility assignment matrix, organizational breakdown structure, resource histogram. The answer is resource histogram. Tell me, what's the question? What is your question in this? The answer to this question is resource histogram. Samshir. A project manager has finished. No explanation on the IMC and was a bit, but is that the answer? Is resource histogram the answer? So when you checked the answers, you see there's no answer on the portal. Okay, I'm telling you, the answer is resource histogram, which shows the resource availability over a period of time. That for how many hours this guy's walking on the week one and how many hours this guy's working on week two and week three and week four. So the week that he's working less, right? You can take out some of his availability from there and assign to those areas where you need more resources. So histogram is a good tool, but at the same time, I'll tell you, nowadays, I mean, because there's those mocks, a lot of these questions are from the previous edition of the PMP examinations, which is fine. You should still have a few of those questions. Nowadays, the PMI do not ask you any questions from the inputs, from the tools and techniques and the outputs. It's a question on tools and techniques, right? In the exam, you wouldn't have that. Okay. A project manager has finished the qualitative risk analysis with the team, which project document may require update based on this information. We call that document as the report, the risk report. So what are the answers now? The risk register reports lessons learned, the risk management plan, assumptions log, risk register assumptions log, change log, and the risk report, and the risk register and the risk report. The answer is between alpha and delta, but I'll probably go delta Because you see, the lessons learned register is not a part of the update in the qualitative risk analysis. Okay. So you update that as a part of the managing the project knowledge process. My answer is Delta Cloud. No, the Bravo is not the answer. That's the wrong answer. They're right. You were correct. The answer is Delta. It may be a misprint or something. Correct answer is Delta. Risk register, risk report. These are the two documents. Now, why not Charlie? Because in doing the qualitative analysis of the risk, why would you update the issues? It uses the term issue log. Only the issues will go into when these risks are materialized. Okay, only then they become the issue. Right now, we identified a risk. We are doing a qualitative analysis of that risk. That's why not Charlie. Fatima, issue log is not updated as the part of the qualitative risk analysis. So the risk is what? Integration scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communication, risk. Well, that's quite a few chapters. Procurement and stakeholders. That should be lesson number 11, right? Oh, let's see that. Let's see this guy. I don't think the issue log should be updated, but just to be sure, let's just check that, right? Let's open the mother of all books. What book is that? The Pinbook. Correct. All credits to the PMI because this is going to go on the internet. So I need to give that credit for that book. The project management body of knowledge. One of the best books in the world. Okay. So we are talking about lesson number 11, which should be around page number 340. That's quality. Okay. What is it? Communication. Communication risk. The next chapter. We're there. We're there. Manage communication. Let's jump a few pages. There we go. We need qualitative risk analysis. That's stakeholders now. No, risk. Perform qualitative risk analysis. We are here. It actually says the issue log. Now I need to read why the issue log. Yep. Assumptions, issues, risk register report. So yeah, I go with the assumptions, I go with the risk register and the risk reports. I need to read why the issue log is updated. Let's read that. Stay with me. There we go. The project documents update. Now, assumptions could be updated because every assumption which is not valid anymore is a risk in itself. I get it, right? So during perform qualitative risk analysis process, new assumptions may be made, new constraints may be identified, and existing assumptions or the constraints may be revisited, which is fine. Okay, issue log. The issue log should be updated to capture any new issues uncovered or chances in the current log issues. Changes in the current log issues. Okay. I'm still not very convinced with this. The risk register of costs, the risk reports of costs. Issue log should be updated to capture any new issues. But while you're performing the qualitative risk analysis of the risk, I don't know why would you. The issues, when a risk turns into the issue, when you go into the execution, right? So when the situation actually happens, that is when it's an issue. And right now we are in an analysis on those identified risks, which are not happened yet. So yeah. But anyways, I correct myself. If the PMI says issue log needs to be updated, personally not very convinced, but yeah, what can be done? Okay, so in that case, the answer is Charlie then. Then it is the Charlie. Any other question, ladies and gentlemen? When will be the next Q&A? Next to next week. So next week, there is no Q&A on Sunday. Next week, there is, Bilal. You're going to get an invite. So I'm sure. Anybody, any question? Yes, I'm saying, when is your exam? You have an exam coming up? The 28th of October. Okay. And that's not too far from now. All the best. That's not too far. Let's read this one. Your team has estimated a 40% probability of a delay in receiving the required parts, which would incur an additional cost of $15,000 to the project and result in $20,000 in lost business. Upon further investigation, you found that the adapting an existing component could save $10,500 in engineering costs with a 30% probability of success. What's the total expected monetary value of these two events? Simple. So 40% chances, so 40% into $15,000, okay? And then 30% multiplied by $10,500, that's the answer. One is positive, the other one is negative. You do the maths, you'll get the answer. So how much is 40% of $15,000? That is $6,000, right? And 30% of $10,500 is going to be around what? 3,200, is it? So 3,200 minus the 6,000, whatever is the remaining, should be the answer. Which should be around what? A negative of 2,550. To me, that should be the answer. $10,850. And how is that calculated? Okay, let's read that again. So your team has an estimated a 40% probability of a delay in receiving the required parts, which will incur an additional cost of $15,000 and 20,000 loss in the so that's $35,000 actually. So $35,000. Do the maths for me. 40% of $35,000, please. How much is that? 40%. Let's do it. So $35,000 multiplied by 40%. You get $14,000, right? And then 30% of $10,500. $10,500. 30% is 3,150 minus $14,000. There we go. You got it? 10,850. I actually missed out 20,000 part initially when I read it. So yeah, that's correct. Yes. Any other question? Hey guys, when I did that calculation, you saw that calculation? Was that visible to you? Okay, it was, right? So you saw that number coming out, negative 10,000 something. Yep, that's the answer. 10,850, I believe. Some questions from the third party. Copy and paste those questions. Where I have to pause the recording to read those. So can you please share these PDFs as the documents were damaged? I reshared those actually. You receive? You're talking about the notes, right? I reshared those, but I can send those to you. I can send those to you. You ping me, okay? I'll just forward those to you. And Claude, you got a question? Jim? Will many questions and the test in general change with the new PIM bucket? Not very sure about it, to be honest. I got a review copy of the PIM bucket. I see some AI, so maybe a few questions from that area. Maybe, but I don't think that it will change the pattern of the examination. I still see those three domains coming into picture again, the people, process, business environment. But you can't comment on that until it is officially released by the PMI and the instruction comes from the PMI. We cannot comment on that part. I also need to go and check the latest decks from the PMI's portal. Let's see what changes, if that at all suggests any changes. So I'm just still waiting for those PPTs to get updated. In fact, I got a meeting today, 15 minutes chat with our community, the senior trainers community. An organization decides to conduct a personality test A team member is confident that the quiz results will reveal pragmatic personality as they only believe in facts and never rely on intuitions. What should the team member personality type be? Judgmental. He says, I believe in facts and never rely on intuition. Although these are not the questions that the PMI would ever ask you during the examination. But to me, it's kind of a judgment that he's passing that this is how it should be. This is what I'm going to be. What is sensing? What is sensing? Samshir? So if you look at these different, no, in fact, actually, it may be sensing as well. I just recalled that. So when you look at those personality traits from the PMBOK, it says, having a sense of assessment. Yep, that could be alpha as well. It could be sensing. You're right. But these are not the questions that comes in the examination. I trust you, me on that. The PMI will never ask you this question in the exam. Yep, sense and intuition. I got it. The PMI shouldn't be asking that question. Not in the real exam. Claude, you got a question? Anybody? Manzoor? No. Professor, how would we know that we are ready for the examination? The day you start scoring 70% plus on the simulation exams, go for the exam. The last 3 simulations, if you're scoring 70% plus. Hey, did you guys check that we have uploaded these simulations? Now you have 4 simulation exams at the LMS portal. Yeah. I made 3 of them in the last 3 months. Can you go with the chat GPT mock test? Would it work? Yeah, but this is actually great to go with those marks, but then you need to provide very clear instructions about the level of intensity, kind of questions. You need to provide a lot of data to the chat GPT. But the chat GPT, I was really impressed with, I saw a sample that somebody made using the chat GPT, and it was great. Good questions there, very good questions. Honestly, getting 80%, 85% most of the times. What marks, what simulations? The IMCs simulation, Manzoor? And that's what I said. If you go straight away with the chat GPT without providing very clear instructions, then the chat GPT's questions, see, the problem with the chat GPT's question is the elimination is really easy. The elimination is really easy. Language with the chat GPT is easy. On the other hand, IMC has a complex words. They were made this way on purpose. I made those. I made those. 70% overall, or the 70% and 60, 66, overall 70% plus. Yeah, Bilal, you're still reading the reader? I shouldn't have said that actually. Some questions you need Oxford Dictionary. You might have understood that, but about me so far. So, You know how much you have to think to build a scenario and then think of four options and the correct answer and the explanation. To me, write in one question is about 12 to 15 minutes. Write in one question. Yes, Bella. Please follow that pattern. Any other question, ladies and gentlemen? Where to find the QA? On the LMS? Okay. You don't see the option to check the mock tests and then the simulation test option. The assessment data, go to the assessment part. I don't see the assessment tab here. You have enrolled courses. Go to enrolled courses, go to the PMP course, click on that, look inside it. How to answer process out by reading all of those inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs. Okay. But then the PMI don't ask you questions from the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs anymore. That's what I was explaining just a while ago. No question from inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs. Don't worry about it. You need to understand those tools and techniques for your own knowledge as the project manager. But the PMI don't test that. That which of the following is not an input to this process. The PMI is not going to ask you this question, not anymore. Back in 2006, 35 to 40 questions from that area. Gemini is harder to use than the ChatGPT, but most of the time its answers are wrong and later it apologizes. No comments on the AI tools. Main formulas to know for the test. All right, I'll tell you. Earned value analysis, all formulas for the earned value analysis. You should read them before you go for the examination. Okay. The other is the critical path, right? Read the critical path. And then, what else? Earned values, critical paths, and the port analysis. These are the main. The beta distribution, delta distribution, variances, and the standard deviation. Using the port. Found it, Uday? Yes, that's the area that I was talking about. You see only the box. I think you should also see the simulations. Critical and please. Okay. The first is earned value, Mansoor. Then you have the critical path. And the third is the port analysis. These three. As an employee, factors such as working conditions, salary status, and job security are significant, similar to colleagues. However, you believe you would be more motivated and make a greater contribution if you were recognized and rewarded for the project achievement and provided opportunities for the professional growth. Which motivation theory? You tell me, which motivation theory is this? This is called Harsberg's motivation hygiene factor theory. Okay. The hygiene factors motivating agents. Harsberg. That's the answer. I actually explained this theory during the class, if you recall. Earned values, critical path, and the port analysis. Yes, Claude. These are the formulas that you have to revise before you go for the examination. Contract related questions such as the toughest of the questions comes from procurement, by the way. I know, but what is the question, Vijay? Only then I can explain. If you have a question, I can explain that question. Simply to put, the most dangerous contracts for a vendor are the fixed price contracts, and the safest for the vendors are cost reimbursable contracts. You should go with the cost reimbursable contracts when you're expecting the scope of the project to change midway. So if you're expecting that, you should go with the cost reimbursable. If you're sure that there would be no significant changes in the middle of the project, you can go with fixed price only when you have done those projects in the past and you understand. Because in fixed price contracts, the vendor have absolutely no incentive to control the cost risk. Okay, the whole cost risk, the 100% cost risk, is actually with the vendor. So that is one thing that you have to remember. That can help you to answer many questions. Time and material is when you do not have a statement of work because you don't need any. It is used mostly for the staff augmentation projects in which the concept of the timesheet comes up, right? So you have a fixed uh, per hour cost and the customer will reimburse for all the other things that you're investing, right? Just like the travel cost, the board and lodge and flight tickets, you're going to get a reimbursement on, as an actuals. Other than that, you get the per hour price, correct? That's the time and material. Any other question? For fixed price, it isn't better to for the seller to choose, even if this scope will change, it will keep the seller safe. No, the fixed price are the most dangerous for the sellers. Because you see, if you go with a firm fixed price contract, you said, I'm going to make 2 rooms for you and I'm going to take, say, $5,000. Yeah, the buyer, yes, yes. So fixed price is good for the buyer, not for the seller. Because if the buyer negotiates well, because the seller will always consider uh, the risk as one of the components when he's quoting. So the cost reimbursable contracts are always cheaper as compared to the fixed price contracts. Because in the fixed price, the buyer, the seller will include the cost risk because he knows that if the things go south, then he has no incentive to control those. So he will negotiate pretty hard on those. But if you get a good deal, and if it is a fixed price contract, the buyer is really, really safe. It's a good contract for the buyer. Any other question? Do we have similar level of questions framing as in simulation test in the PMP? Because one of the tests I used ChatGPT to understand the question. Yes, more or less similar. I tried to keep them very similar to the actual. Now, in the third simulation that I uploaded, I even included the mix and match questions, multiple response type questions, fill in the blank questions as well. So I included those as well as a part of the test. Try the last one. That should be mock test number 4. Try that one. Which one is that? The first simulation? The very first one? Good. That's a very good score. Why the mark? Because this is just a mark. That's not a real. So a markup test, right? And but then second one was the tough. I thought. Okay. Try the fourth one, the latest one that I uploaded. Try that one. You're gonna like this one because you'll get the flavors of various different types of questions as well. Will there be any break in 4 hours? Yes, 2 breaks. 60 questions, break of 10 minutes, another 60 questions, another break of 10 minutes. Final set of 60 questions. So 20 minutes of the total break. After every 60 questions, you have a choice. Is there a major difference between the mark? Simulations are very close to the real exam. Marks are just to check your knowledge. So there is a difference. Any other question? I found so many errors in the mock exam 1 and 2. That is wrong options provided for the wrong questions. Explanation not matching the answer. I'll please send me those specific. Yes, because I also noticed that in the mock part, there are a few of those questions. So thank you so much for raising this. I'll ask the team to look into that. Yep, I'm going to ask the team to review that. I also saw a few of those. Try the simulations. Simulations are good, right? A lot of answers missing. In yes, yes. I asked the team already for the mock part. Simulations are fine. Okay. Try the simulation. Do the simulation number 4. Let me know what's your feedback about the fill in the blank questions and multiple response questions. Okay. So we will update that. We are in a continuous process of updating those questions in the mock exam. The cloned. Okay. They were good. Nice. All right, then. It was great session today, right? So I'm going to upload this thing on the YouTube so that you can check that anytime. Just go and search for IMC certifications on the YouTube. You can get the channel. That's where you're going to have all of these updated sessions. I've taken 2 mock tests, Mark 1, 65, Mark 2, 46. But that will improve, Fatima. It will improve over a period of time. Any other test? Go to the Google Drive link. You have this book there. I'm writing that name. Try this book. First, I've written the name of the writer and then the name of the book. Very good questions. All right, can we close that for today? If we all are fine with this? Yeah. As soon as possible to upload the Google Drive link and all the lessons. I can do that. Just ping me. Just ping me. I'll send those to you, Rajiv. Okay. All right, guys. So I shall see you in the next Q&A session, which will happen in a couple of weeks. Not the next week, but the next week. Should we buy another? Nah, nothing. Why do you want to spend money on that? So you already have 2,000 questions available on the Google Drive link. Go and check those. That's good. You should try those. You don't have to buy anything. I mean, you want to do it for yourself, you can go ahead and do that, but I don't think it is required. All right, guys. So let's close it for today, and I shall see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye. God bless you. Thank you, Cheryl.